don't worry. This will be a very short video. I've received many complaints, constructive criticisms, that some of my videos are just too long. Apparently, many people are just too busy. They just don't have the time to spend 15 or 20 minutes of their life actually learning something. But not to fear, as you may know, if you've watched my previous videos, I respect your time. That's why I never waste your time with fancy intros and stupid music. I'm not the Channel 6 News. I'm just some YouTube hobo talking into a camera and trying to help you improve your life. I know that you've got many very important tweets to go through and catch up on. So as with all my videos, I will keep this one short and to the point because you are my favorite viewer, and I know that your time is just far too valuable to waste. I've got too much respect for you as a viewer and as a human being to waste your very valuable time. So if you watch any of my videos, or if you've watched some of the previous videos, you know that lately I've been testing out the repeater that I built for everyone in my community to use. And I see that a lot of people are still confused about the repeater channels on their GMRS radios and not understanding the difference between a regular channel, a simplex channel, and a repeater channel. They don't understand why sometimes they can hear somebody talking on a repeater, and when they try to talk to them, they don't hear them, or they have trouble. They don't understand what needs to be set up to talk through a repeater. There is much confusion. So I'm going to clear that up. I'm going to explain it all, and I'm going to explain it in a way that does not make you die from boredom. So to get started, let's quickly go over some of the definitions. Simplex means talking directly from radio to radio, from walkie-talkie to walkie-talkie. That's your normal, regular, I pick up my walkie-talkie, I press the button, and I talk to you on your walkie-talkie or your base or mobile. It's direct radio-to-radio communication, just like a CB radio. This is called Simplex. GMRS radios and FRS radios have 22 Simplex channels. That means they transmit on 22 different frequencies. But on a GMRS radio, you don't have to worry about frequencies, it's just channels. So channels 1 through 22, Simplex channels. Very simple, right? A repeater channel, and I'm talking about repeater channels only on GMRS radios. It's very different in ham. This does not apply to ham radios. If you have a repeater-capable GMRS radio, in addition to those 22 channels, you also have 8 repeater channels. Those channels are different than the Simplex channels. And the main difference between the repeater channels and the Simplex channels is that a repeater channel is actually 2 channels combined, 2 frequencies combined. On a GMRS radio, it all happens behind the scenes, so you don't have to worry about what's actually happening. All you need to know to understand how it works is that there are 2 channels or 2 frequencies, transmit and receive. When you're using one of the repeater channels, the radio automatically transmits on one frequency and receives or listens on another frequency. And this is how the repeater works. The repeater listens on one frequency and then retransmits or repeats your transmission on another frequency. So all the GMRS radios using that repeater channel are transmitting out on one frequency. The repeater is listening on that frequency. The repeater is then retransmitting on a different frequency, and that's the frequency that the radios are listening to. One frequency in, one frequency out. And the repeater and the radios do all the fancy work behind the scenes. And those 8 transmit frequencies are set aside just for repeaters, and they're only used for transmitting on. The receive portion of those 2 frequencies that the repeaters use are shared with the regular GMRS channels. This is where much confusion ensues. Simplex has got 22 channels. All right, 1 through 22. There's 8 repeater channels, which consist of 2 channels, transmit, which we're not going to think about anymore, and receive. Those 8 receive channels are shared with 8 of those 22 Simplex channels. Channels 15 through 22 out of the 22. Simple, right? So let me give you a real world example. So let's just say you are listening on channel 16, and then let's say you hear two other people talking on channel 16, but they're on a repeater. Now you know that they're on a repeater a couple of ways. Usually repeaters will have what's called a kickback or a squelch tail. So when they're talking, they talk to their friend, they let go, they stop transmitting, but you hear that the transmitter stays keyed up or transmitting for 1 or 2 seconds. So they'll stop talking, there's a bit of silence, and then you hear the repeater stop transmitting. So it's kind of a pause after they talk. This is called a squelch tail or a kickback or a kerchunk. It's hard to explain, but you'll know it when you hear it. So you're talking on channel 16 with your buddies, and now you're hearing these other guys talking through a repeater. So you try to transmit to them. You're on channel 16, you hear them talking on channel 16, and they ignore you. Well, they're not ignoring you because they don't like you. It's because they don't hear you, because they're talking through the repeater and you're on Simplex. You're talking on one channel, they're making use of both of those channels. So because your radio is only transmitting from channel 16 to channel 16, that repeater is looking for you to transmit to the repeater frequency, and then it gets retransmitted on channel 16. Simple, right? It'll soak in. You need to configure your radio to make use of that second, that transmit only frequency, so that you can transmit to the repeater and then it retransmits or repeats over channel 16. If you have a GMRS radio, like my Ocean KG805G, it's very simple to do. If you're using a Baofeng, it's not so easy. If you're using a Baofeng, you've got to go in and configure the transmit, the receive, the offset. It's very complicated, and it's not legal, as we all know. Talking on GMRS frequencies with a UV5R is not permitted. I'm not going to go over any of that because it would take too long, it's too confusing, and your time, you, my favorite viewer, your time is too valuable, as we've already discussed. So on a GMRS radio, to talk on that repeater, all you need to do is go to that repeater channel and start talking. The confusing part is, how do you know which channel to use? So you've got your 22 Simplex channels, you've got your 8 repeater channels. Those 8 repeater channels share, remember, we're sharing frequencies on the receiving side, share with channels 15 through 22. And those channels 15 through 22 on the Simplex list align with channels 23 through 30 on the repeater list. Let's do the math. If I'm on channel 16, that's the second channel in the list of the 8 shared channels. Channel 15 is the first, channel 16 is the second, 17 is the third. So if I'm talking on channel 16, 15, 16, that's the second shared channel, which means I want to use the second repeater channel. Some GMRS radios, when you look at the little screen, even refers to repeater channel 2 as repeater number 16. All radios are different. Some call them repeaters 1 through 8. Some may show something else, but they always align. 15 through 22 always align with repeater channels. Now I'm getting confused. Repeater channels 1 through 8. The formula is 8 shared Simplex channels, 15 through 22, always correspond with the repeater channels 1 through 8. Did that make sense? So you got channel 15 is the first shared one, channel 16 is the second shared one. That means I go to repeater channel, not number 1, repeater channel 2. They're in perfect alignment. Those 8 shared Simplex channels in perfect alignment with the 8. This is only 5. Let's pretend like there's more. They're in perfect alignment with each other. That's how you know what channel or what repeater to use when you hear them talking on Simplex while you're off-roading. But of course, there is one more monkey wrench to throw into your fun and games, and that is the tone. Many repeaters, not all, but most, require a tone. It requires that your radio transmits a tone to the repeater so that the repeater will pay attention to you. Otherwise, it just ignores you and it won't retransmit your transmission. It won't repeat. There's CTCSS tones and there's DCS tones. They're the same. They're different, but they're the same. It doesn't matter. They're just different types of tones. And you need that tone. If the repeater that you want to talk on has a tone, you need that tone to open it up and then transmit on it. It's very easy to put that tone in. The basic steps are you go to the repeater channel that you're talking on, you go into the menu, and you select the type of tone, DCS or CTCSS, and you select the tone number from the list. The hard part is knowing what that tone is, and you have to know that tone before you can transmit on it. You need to get that from the repeater owner or from a website like mygmrs.com, where GMRS repeater owners list their repeaters, but you need to know the tone, and you need to know how to do it. I've made a whole video about finding the repeaters and knowing and configuring them and all of that. There's a whole other video I've made. You can watch that right there, going over all the minute details of finding the repeaters in your area and putting the tones in. You are now a YouTube certified GMRS radio operator. Now you've got something to brag about, and you can thank me in the comments below for not wasting your time and not killing you with boredom.